Hello and welcome to our special show Masterclass with me, Priyanka Chawla. Now today we live in a world where nearly everything is technology. We are glued to our mobile phones from morning to night, gaining knowledge through social media, websites and media as well. We download apps to learn new languages and watch YouTube videos to learn how to play musical instruments. Yet when it comes to learning in the classroom, we barely scratch the surface of what's possible in terms of technology. In the times when educational institutes have been shut amid COVID-19 outbreak, the need for education innovation has become acute. Educational innovation concerns all stakeholders, the learners, parents, teachers, education administrators, researchers and policymakers. It requires their active involvement and support. So in today's masterclass, we discuss education technology, what works and what doesn't in the time of the lockdown. And it's my pleasure to introduce our esteemed panel of guests, Mr. Abhay Jere, Chief Information Officer in the Ministry of HRD and All India Council of Technical Education. We'll also be joined by Mr. Unnat Pandit in some time, who's the Program Director for Atal Innovation Mission at MHRD, and Sunny Thakral, Head of ICT, British Council. So Mr. Thakral, if I could ask you, what do you think are the biggest challenges for India in terms of going education in technology?
Good afternoon, everyone. I think one of the big challenges India has is a set infrastructure that allows schools to communicate with home correctly. There are a number of schools that don't actually have access to technology where teachers can go into students' homes and support parents in their learning, and that's one of the biggest challenges there is. Of course, there's a huge amount of schools that do have access to technology, and then there's a difference between how they actually utilize tech. For example, you might have synchronous learning where students and teachers can collaborate in real time, and at the same time you have asynchronous learning where teachers might set work and students and parents are supported at home to do that on their own.
Right.
Of course, the masses, the schools that we're talking about, which are in the villages or in the smaller towns, there is no technology infrastructure there, and supporting them with learning is going to be one of the biggest challenges.
Absolutely. As you rightly said, that reaching out to all the areas is one of the biggest challenges. Mr. Jere, if I could ask you, what do you think the immediate steps could be taken, because now it's the need of the hour?
So, first, I would like to really thank for inviting me.
It's a pleasure, sir.
As I work for Ministry of HRD and especially for higher education. And as higher education department, we are taking multiple steps to ensure that e-learning actually happens a reality in our technical education institutions as well as our higher learning education institutions. What we have done recently is create a scheme called NEAT, N-E-A-T, National Education Alliance on Technology. So on one hand, we have large number of edtech startups who are offering great technology platforms based on machine learning approaches, based on adaptive learning, personalized learning, what we call,
Right.
which is completely the need of our. And on the other side, we have large sections of students who are into still a rote kind of a mechanism where they are not exposed to personalized learning. So these startups are struggling to get customers and are offering great platforms, but students are not aware which platforms they should buy because many such startups are out there. So what we said was that as MHRD, we will go ahead and endorse some of these platforms. So we actually called applications from edtech companies. We evaluated their products, and now we are going to help these edtech companies reach out to the institutions. And for every customer which they get because of our efforts, 25% licenses they have to give us for free. For example, if we help them get 100 customers, then they have to give us 25 licenses for free, which we will actually distribute into lower socio-eco strata.
Absolutely.
So on one side, we want students to go ahead and buy these kind of great platforms, and on other side we are helping lower socio-eco students to get these state-of-art products for free.
But Mr. Jere, if I could ask you, not just free products, I think internet connectivity and reaching out to areas which don't have proper connection is also should be one of the top agendas to be taken care of right now.
I completely agree with you, and also we are working on that. And many of these licenses, many of these products are standalone products which you can actually go ahead, download, and go ahead and use them. So many times the dependence on internet is not there for many of these products.
Okay.
Apart from that, when we are looking at these products, what we are also looking at is just not technology training. Where India is currently lacking, or our students are currently lacking, are on cognitive skills, design thinking skills, aptitude, problem solving skills. So how we can, even communication skills. So we have identified through our initiative such kind of also products which we would like students to actually go ahead, buy them, use them, because that's where we have to go. If we are actually aiming for $5 trillion economy, we need to create generation of problem solvers. And in that, tech products are going to play a major role.
Absolutely. Mr. Sunny, if I could ask you, as he rightly pointed out, that tech, is going to play a massive role, but it's totally new for most of the students in the country. We are not up to where the West has reached. So how do you think the educational institutions and the students could adapt to it now?
Okay, I think there are two challenges. This setting up of infrastructure is one of the key things at the moment, and I'm just going to parallel, because right now, because of the COVID-19 crisis, China, Hong Kong and Singapore, and probably Japan and South Korea have been further ahead in how do you take an entire nation, especially a nation where you might have schools which don't have access to technology. For example, if you don't have access to devices, you can't access any of these apps. So we encourage those schools to come on board. And what they're doing is they're going back to traditional forms of technology like the television. For example, in China, you broadcasted an entire day's worth of curriculum through the television. And unfortunately, television itself is also something that most households might not have. And I'm now thinking in rural India. So how do we empower children? And that's where your smartphones are going to come into play. A lot of these devices, as rightly pointed out, have apps, and apps can be both online and offline. And a lot of children are probably one of the first groups that get themselves familiar with the use of apps. So if we can encourage that kind of ecosystem where these learning apps, and there's plenty of those in the market, and the Indian edtech sector is phenomenal at that. The amount of people that have given free access to apps on phones or on the internet for everybody to have in this particular crisis is amazing. And that is the way you'd probably encourage children to come through. On the second point, I would probably say is that the use of artificial intelligence is going to be very critical. And I'm not sure whether you're aware of technologies like Century, which are again, world class, but they're offering free access to schools all over the world. And what they allow students to do is go on their platform and then learn how a child learns. That is probably going to be one of the biggest ways of us jumping. And I'm talking about the same kind of jump. We did not go 3G. We went from 2G, straight to 4G, and that's exactly going to be the big jump in edtech as well. We're going to skip an entire generation of technology and move ahead.
Absolutely, we are going to skip an entire generation and move ahead. Now that's the big point there. We are also joined by Mr. Unnat Pandit. He's the Mission Program Director for Atal Innovation Mission with MHRD on the phone line with us. Mr. Pandit, if I could ask you, what are the immediate changes that should happen for education and innovation in India to improve?
See, while we are thinking